Hey YouTube, this is Brendan with Cusack Prep, and in this video we're going to be going over the law of sines and the law of cosines. So law of sines and law of cosines have two formulas that might look a little bit intimidating, but we're going to go ahead and write them out right here. So for law of sines, we're going to have the sine of angle A divided by side A is equal to the sine of angle B divided by the side B. And that's going to equal the sine of angle C divided by side C. Now, law of cosines is going to look pretty similar to the Pythagorean theorem to start. So we're going to start with C squared is equal to A squared plus B squared. But then we're going to have minus 2AB cosine of C. So those are the two equations for law of sines and cosines. And let's talk about how they're used in practice. Now, in practice, what's going to happen is you're going to be given a triangle. So maybe I'll draw a triangle over here, something that looks a little bit like this. And with that triangle, you're going to have three corners, which may be labeled capital A, capital B, and capital C. And we're going to say that these three capital letters represent the angles. Now, we also have three side lengths. Now, opposite angle C is going to be side C. Opposite angle B is going to be side B, and opposite angle A is going to be side A. And this is what you're looking at when you're deciding which equation to use, as well as what side represents which variable. So let's say we had a triangle, and we were trying to figure out, should we use law of sines, or should we use law of cosines? So there's a lot of rules about side, angle, angle, side, all these different things. But all I remember is that if you have an angle and you have the side directly opposite of it, you're always going to use law of sines. So let's see what I mean by that. So let's say I told you angle A was 28 degrees, and I told you angle B, angle B was, let's say angle B is 100 degrees, and let's say I told you side B is going to equal, let's give it a length of 25. So when we're asking ourselves whether or not we use law of sines or cosines, we look at this and we say, okay, well I have an angle, and I have the side directly opposite. I have both angle B and side B, and anytime that happens, we're going to use law of sines. Now, we never use this whole equation at once. We only take two parts of it. So we take the part that we know both values for. In this case, we know both sine of B and B. And then we take one of the parts with one of our unknowns. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set sine of A, which is 28 degrees, over A. And I'm going to set that equal to sine of B, which is 100 degrees, over B, which is 25. So now that we have this, what we can do is we can go ahead and cross multiply, so that we're going to have 25 times sine of 28 is equal to A times sine of 100. And if we want to solve this for A, what we're going to do is we're going to divide both sides by the sine of 100. Divide both sides by the sine of 100. And then what we end up with at the end is we can see that side A is equal to 25 times sine of 28 degrees over 100. Your teacher may ask you just to leave this in this form, or they may ask you to put it in a calculator and solve it. If you're going to put this into a calculator, just make sure you're in degree mode. So with that, we'd be able to figure out what side A is. Now, if I know angle A is 28 degrees, and I know angle B is 100 degrees, so let's say this angle right here is 28 degrees, and this angle right here is 100 degrees, then I know I can figure out angle C because I know that the three angles in a triangle have to add to 180. So adding 100 and 28 together, we get 128. And then 180 minus 128 is going to give us 52. So then we know that angle C right here is going to be 52 degrees. Now that we know what angle C is, we can once again use the law of sines, but now to figure out side C. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use these two parts on the right side. Sine of B over B is equal to sine of C over C. And I'm going to use the leftmost side and the rightmost side. So sine of A over A is equal to sine of C over C. So plugging into that, we would have sine of A, which is sine of, actually I'm going to use the B one, sine of B, which is sine of 100, divided by B, which is 25. And I'm going to set that to sine of C, which is sine of 52, divided by side C. And I'm going to do the same thing I did last time, where I start by cross multiplying. So I would have C times the sine of 100 degrees is equal to 25 times the sine of 52. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 100, and I would get C is equal to 25 times the sine of 52 degrees divided by the sine of 100 degrees. And same thing, you would put that into a calculator, or you may just find that it's left in this form. Once you have that, you've completely solved this triangle. You've figured out what all the angles are, as well as what all the sides are. So we'd say that we have solved for this triangle. Now let's take a look at a case where we'd have to use law of cosines. So law of cosines is basically what you use anytime you don't have those two things. So if you don't have an angle in the side directly opposite of that angle, you're going to use law of cosines. So let's take a look at an example. So an example that might require law of cosines would be something like this, where we have a triangle, and we're given maybe the angle between two of the sides. So let's say this is 50 degrees, and we're told that this side length over here is, I don't know, let's call it 70, and let's call this side length over here 30. Now, when looking at the law of cosines equation, it's important to note that this angle right here is angle C. This over here is side C. So if we're going to use this equation in the form that it's in, we need to make sure that we let the angle be the angle that is known. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to let angle C, I'm going to note that was C degrees because it's a little bit hard to see the difference in C's. So C is 50 degrees. And then I'm going to call this side A, I'm going to call this angle A, I'm going to call this side B, I'm going to call this angle B. So I can see that side A is 70 and side B is 30. So plugging into the law of cosines equation, I would say that C squared, that's my unknown, would equal 70 squared plus 30 squared minus 2 times 70 times 30 times the cosine of 50 degrees. And again, at this point, you could plug it into your calculator, you could figure out what exact number this is, or you may find that it's just left in this form. So example, in the ACT, they may ask you which equation could be used to figure out what side C is, and this might be one of the answer choices that you're presented with. So just to recap, you're going to use law of sines anytime you have an angle in the side directly opposite of that angle in the same triangle, and you're going to use law of cosines anytime you don't have that specific combination of a side and the angle opposite of it. Thanks for watching. Hope you found this video helpful.